My husband of convenience, who I barely knew, suddenly texted me, "Busy?" I thought it was a coworker asking about a project, so I replied, "Yep." He didn't write back. Half an hour later, the man who'd vanished for 6 months because he supposedly hated me showed up at my door. His eyes were red-rimmed, his voice trembled, and he pleaded, "Have you forgotten about me?" A bad case of food poisoning from some barbecue landed me in the hospital for 5 days. The day I got home, my coworker Karen sent me a few files. She said the new CEO who started last week wasn't happy with our team's current project and was demanding major revisions. Since I'd been out for 5 days, my part of the project was stalled. I needed to go through the new materials tonight and come up with a revised plan. After explaining the work, Karen added, "This new CEO is gorgeous, by the way. You single girls are in for a treat. But he's super intense about work and chews people out like you wouldn't believe. Everyone on our team has been ripped to shreds by him in a meeting. You have to nail these revisions." All the single women on the team were ready to make a move at first, but after he yelled at them, they all backed off. "Oh, right, just call me if you have any questions about the changes. Let's try to get this done tonight." I wasn't interested in the new CEO, I was more worried that my sick leave had held up the team's progress. I quickly downloaded the files and opened my laptop to dive into the materials Karen had sent. I soon realized that because the changes were so drastic, all our previous work was useless. None of our old ideas would work anymore. I had to reread all the background materials and start from scratch. Worse, the new files had sections in a foreign language. I was pulling my hair out trying to get through it, getting more stressed by the minute. I lost track of time, and before I knew it, the sky was dark. My stomach was growling, so I grabbed my phone to order something easy on my stomach for dinner. I was scrolling through a delivery app, trying to decide what to eat, when a message popped up. "Busy?" Assuming it was a coworker checking on my progress, I tapped the notification and replied in the pop-up window, "Yep. But I'm almost done." I waited a moment, but Karen didn't reply, so I switched back to the delivery app. I ended up ordering beef with scrambled eggs over rice. Then I put my phone down and went back to the project, reading and writing up my proposal. Half an hour later, the doorbell rang. I figured it was my food. I got up to open the door. But as soon as I opened it a crack, a force from outside pushed it wide open. And just like that, I was face to face with the person on the other side. Where's my food?" I held out my hand, looking at the man in front of me in confusion. Have delivery guys gotten this formal? He was even wearing a suit. Anyone who knew me would know I ordered dinner, but an outsider might think I was literally starving. I found it strange and looked him up and down. He definitely didn't look like he was here to deliver my food. The man's shirt was tucked neatly into his dress pants, outlining a slim waist. The top 3 buttons were undone, revealing an impressive chest. And then there was his face. He was unfairly handsome. I couldn't help but stare, and I got a strange feeling that he looked familiar. But that seemed impossible. He hated me. Why would he ever come looking for me? Besides, Nick Hayes was a cold, cruel person. This miserable guy at my door, with his red-rimmed eyes and trembling lips, looked like he'd just had a good cry. They were polar opposites. "Sir?" "Hello?" I waved a hand in front of his dazed, captivating eyes and called out softly. He snapped back to reality, looked at me, then glanced inside my apartment. This whole thing was just bizarre. My tone became guarded. "Who are you? Can I help you?" He suddenly stepped into my apartment, getting very close to me. His voice shook as he spoke, his tone almost a plea. "Can I be one of them?" I had no idea what he was talking about. But his voice confirmed one thing. He didn't just look like Nick Hayes. He was Nick Hayes. My husband of convenience. We barely knew each other, and he didn't like me, in fact, he hated me. The first time I went to his house, he threw the welcome gift I'd spent hours making by hand into the trash. I overheard him telling his friend, "Marry her." Not a chance. But later, his grandfathers will stipulated that he had to be married to get his inheritance, so he reluctantly agreed to marry me. For the inheritance. After we signed the papers, he disappeared. We hadn't seen each other in 6 months. Nick's voice was incredible and very distinctive, a low, raspy tone with a lazy, arrogant drawl. It was unmistakable. Once I realized it was him, I shot him an annoyed look, tried to push him out, and slammed the door. He hated me, and the feeling was mutual. He saw it coming and quickly stepped inside, reaching back to grab the handle and pulling the door shut with a loud bang. He scanned the apartment as if looking for someone else. Confirming he was alone, he dropped the pitiful act and put his usual cold, superior mask back on. He braced his hands on the wall, trapping me. His deep voice was laced with a probing, oppressive tone. Where is he? Speak up, honey. What person? I was even more confused now, frowning as I shot the question back at him. He smirked and leaned in, giving my neck a light bite. A sharp, tingling pain shot through me, and I instinctively flinched, but he pressed closer. He was so close I could feel the heat radiating from his chest. Did you forget about me? As he said it, I could clearly see him gritting his teeth. And then it hit me. I think I replied to the wrong message. That busy? Text from earlier, it was from him. I didn't have time to wonder why he was suddenly texting me. I patiently explained the whole situation to him, but he still seemed skeptical. After a long silence, he asked uneasily, Really? You're not lying to me? Then why did you open the door without even asking who it was? I thought it was my food delivery. So there's really no other man here? Well, if you count yourself as a man, then yes, there is. Nick smiled, a cigarette dangling from his lips. So, honey, do you need a man? His every word dripped with an undeniable allure. I just stared at him coldly. He was acting so weird tonight. Right after we got married, his family started pressuring us to have kids, but he flatly refused. Not only would he not touch me, but he also shamelessly demanded separate bedrooms. When his grandfather found out, he was so furious he had Nick disciplined according to old family rules. It got so bad I couldn't even watch. That night, covered in injuries, he moved out of our marital home. I'd been living alone ever since. He deposited money into my account on time every month, but I was afraid he'd take it all back when we divorced, so I never touched a cent of it. And now he was suddenly texting me, showing up out of the blue, and calling me honey. It was so out of character. No, I don't. Now that you know I'm not cheating on you, you can leave. I'm your legal husband. I'm not leaving. He lowered his head and buried his face in my neck, planting a few wet kisses as his hot breath fanned across my ear. The slight tickle made me shrink back. He wrapped an arm around my waist, lifted me up, and ignored my protests, peppering my lips with small pecks. His hands roamed up and down, as if testing my limits. His teasing made my legs go weak, my mind turning hazy and confused. Only my hands were still weakly pushing back. Then I suddenly remembered the proposal I had to finish, and my head cleared instantly. I lifted my leg and aimed a sharp kick at a certain part of Nick's body. He winced in pain, letting out a grunt. Ow, that hurts. I was still in his arms. I patted his cheek a few times and smiled. I thought boys liked a little pain. Nick's hand on my lower back tightened, his voice turning deep and cold. Annie, you've gotten naughty. He was about to retaliate, but just as I was about to stop him, the doorbell rang. Nick yelled impatiently toward the door, Leave the food at the door. He leaned in to kiss me again. But then a deep, middle-aged man's voice came from the hallway. What food? Who are you, and why are you in my daughter's apartment? It was my dad's voice. I quickly motioned for Nick to put me down. My dad knows the code to my door. We were standing right in the entryway and could clearly hear him punching in the numbers. When my dad opened the door and came in, he found Nick and me sitting obediently at the dining table. I was flipping through materials and writing my proposal, while he sat beside me, offering suggestions and guidance. My dad was visibly stunned when he saw Nick, then he started bowing and scraping. "Mr. Hayes? What are you doing here?" Nick stood up and nodded at my dad. "Annie ran into some problems with work. I came back to help." Liar. He doesn't even blink when he lies, I thought to myself. Oh, I see. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Hayes. We shouldn't have troubled you with such a small matter. "It's my duty," Nick replied coolly. Seeing my dad act so deferential made me sad. My family used to be on equal footing with the Hayes family. But after a failed investment, my dad was saddled with debt, and we fell so far that we disappeared from our social circle. Not wanting me to suffer with him, my dad begged an old friend of my grandfather's, Nick's grandfather, to take me in. I was 18 that year. When I arrived at the Hayes house, I learned that our grandfathers had arranged for us to be married when we were just babies. Me and Nick. His grandfather asked for my thoughts on the matter. By then, the gap between our families was enormous. Nick and I had only met 2 or 3 times as children. We barely knew each other. A verbal agreement like that didn't need to be taken seriously. Worried they might be hesitant to bring it up for fear of hurting my pride, I spoke up first. "Grandpa, Nick and I don't have feelings for each other. An old promise shouldn't bind us now. I think we should call off the engagement. Besides, Nick himself had said he would never marry me." When my dad found out, he assumed the Hayes family canceled it because my family had fallen on hard times. He blamed himself for a long time. So, after Nick and I got married, my dad was practically groveling whenever he was around the Hayes family. He was terrified I would be mistreated or neglected. When he learned that Nick had moved out of our home, he was both angry and heartbroken. He even wanted to bring me back home with him. Thinking about it all, a wave of sadness washed over me. I sniffled and asked my dad, "Dad, what brings you all the way out here?" My dad immediately held up the container he was carrying. "Weren't you in the hospital with a stomach bug? I was worried you wouldn't eat properly, so I made you your favorite congee." My dad opened the container on the table. Inside was my favorite pork rib congee. The rich, meaty aroma of the bone broth filled the air. I was already starving, and my appetite soared. I took the spoon from my dad and dug in. Slow down, sweetie. No one's going to steal it from you. You should eat less takeout. That stuff is unhealthy and has no nutrition. You not knowing how to cook isn't a long-term solution. Once I pay off my debts, I'll come take care of you." As he spoke, my dad stroked my head, his eyes full of tenderness. Nick sat quietly to the side, not saying a word. After I finished the congee, my dad cleaned up and got ready to leave. Before he left, he glanced worriedly at Nick, who was sitting on the sofa. At the door, he whispered to me, "Has he been treating you badly?" I didn't want him to worry, so I smiled and shook my head. "No, he's been very good to me." Only then did my dad leave, reassured. "It's done. Come take a look." As soon as the door closed, Nick's casual voice drifted over. "He finished my entire proposal in the time it took me to eat a bowl of congee?" I skeptically took the laptop from him and glanced at the screen. He really had done it all. Seeing my shocked expression, he explained briefly, "I've been following this project. I know exactly what's needed. For your part, this is the optimal approach." What he said. Alarm bells went off in my head. The new CEO Karen was talking about, it couldn't be him, could it? The presentation is tomorrow. Don't forget. With that, he stood up and looked at me, his expression still cold. By the time I processed this new information and looked up, he was already gone. The next day at the meeting, just as it was my turn to present, the conference room door opened. The manager in the front row started to get up, but Nick didn't even look at him. He headed straight for a seat right in my line of sight and sat down. I was standing at the front, frozen, until I saw him casually flipping through my notebook. My heart skipped a beat. This is bad, I thought. Oh no, 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 no. That notebook, meant for meeting notes, had very few actual notes in it. It was mostly filled with all sorts of weird things I'd written while doodling and daydreaming. There were a lot of complaints about him, and even some R-rated fanfictions starring him as the main character. What are you waiting for? Start, he said, rapping his knuckles sharply on the table. He gestured at me with his chin, his tone icy, his eyes never leaving the notebook. I got even more nervous. The clear train of thought I had before was completely gone, and my words came out jumbled. I stumbled my way through the presentation. I was covered in a cold sweat. Everyone in the room had been verbally shredded by Nick at some point. Seeing my terrible performance, they were all bracing for my demise. You could have heard a pin drop in the conference room. No one dared to breathe too loudly. They were all just waiting for Nick to speak. He was still intently reading my notebook. After what felt like an eternity, he finally looked up, a smile playing on his lips. He actually seemed to be in a good mood. He glanced around at the others, leaned back in his chair, and looked completely relaxed and at ease. He didn't look angry at all. I was stunned. Based on his personality, seeing that stuff should have sent him into a rage. The manager, reading the room, finally dared to speak. Mr. Hayes, do you have any feedback on this proposal? Oh. Feedback? None. Her voice is very nice. The manager's face went from green to pale. His lips opened and closed, but nothing came out. Oh, no, I mean, she presented it very well. I'm very satisfied with the proposal. But I'd like to ask Annie, where did the inspiration for this plan come from? How should I know? You're the one who wrote it. After a moment of hesitation, I answered honestly, the inspiration came from a family member. He seemed very pleased with that answer. The smile on his face widened, and he didn't seem inclined to press me further. Well, he said, your family member is very impressive. His words were loaded with hidden meaning. My co-workers' gazes toward me shifted instantly. I forced a calm smile. Thank you for the compliment, Mr. Hayes. He left before the meeting was over. Everyone in the room let out a collective sigh of relief. When I got back to my desk, I opened my phone and saw our department's group chat was blowing up. They had been texting during my presentation. OMG, why did Mr. Hayes show up? I thought he was too busy for this meeting. My heart literally stopped when he walked in. I almost stood up and bowed. Ha ha ha, don't be so dramatic. Mr. Hayes is reading Annie's notebook. What did he see? Why is he smiling like that? If there's anything bad about him in there, she's toast. Annie's been out for a while. It's her first day seeing him, no way she'd write anything bad about him. Annie's face is so pale, poor thing is sweating bullets. It's over, guys. Annie's presentation, she's going to get destroyed. I feel so bad for her, sigh. I don't know, he doesn't look angry at all. In fact, he seems pretty happy. He didn't yell at her. Is he possessed? He actually sounded kind of fond. He said her voice was nice, ha ha ha. I've never heard him compliment anyone before, and this time he even complimented Annie's husband. I'm shocked. When did Annie get married? She's probably making it up. She's always been single. Who's this family member? Doesn't have to be a husband. Why did Mr. Hayes take Annie's notebook when he left? Is there something in there he's interested in? My co-workers had sent over 100 messages. I scrolled through them. When I got to the last one, I felt completely drained. That's right. He took my notebook. The stuff in there was not meant for human eyes. As I was getting ready to leave work, I got a text from Nick, don't leave when you clock out. Those words hit me like a death sentence. I started fidgeting anxiously. I sat on pins and needles until quitting time. After my colleagues left one by one, I was the only one left, waiting nervously for Nick. He didn't come out of the CEO's office until the entire company was empty. So obedient. I told you not to leave, and you really didn't. Did you think I had a choice? We're going to my parents' place for dinner. He motioned for me to follow and strode ahead. When he noticed I wasn't keeping up, he stopped and waited. As I caught up, he turned and smiled at me. Nice writing, by the way. Damn it. He really did read all of it. I wanted to cry. I fidgeted with my shirt cuffs to ease my overwhelming embarrassment. Nick seemed to be in a great mood, even humming a little tune in the car. I secretly breathed a sigh of relief. From the looks of it, he wasn't planning on holding it against me. We arrived at the Hayes family estate. His grandparents were thrilled to see me and Nick arrive together. They pulled me aside and chatted with me for ages. At dinner, the food was so delicious that I couldn't help but have 2 extra bowls of rice. When I went to get my 3rd serving, Nick leaned over my chair and whispered, "You really like this, huh?" I clutched my bowl, a little embarrassed, and licked my lips. I glanced at him and answered honestly, "The cook is just so good." I couldn't help myself. He nodded, the corners of his mouth turning up. The next second, he called over the cook, Maria, and said to his parents, "Mom, Dad, I'd like Maria to come cook for Annie and me at our place. You don't mind, do you?" The Hayes family had plenty of cooks, so losing one wasn't a problem. His parents agreed immediately. I snuck a glance at him. He was still eating calmly, as if nothing had happened. I was secretly surprised that he remembered what my dad had said to me that day. I ducked my head and started eating again. I remembered that right after we got married, Nick didn't like having too many people in the house, so he didn't bring any staff over, only arranging for someone to come cook and clean periodically. After he moved out and I got busier with work, I started eating all my meals out, so the housekeeper eventually stopped coming altogether. After dinner, Nick's mom pulled me into a corner. "What about you? Still no news? You've been married for over 6 months now." I felt helpless. Didn't she know perfectly well why I wasn't pregnant? "Nick hasn't been home," I said, deciding to just be honest. It wasn't my fault. I already told him. "You two need to get pregnant quickly. It will give you a better chance when the inheritance is divided." He promised he'd go home. "One of you two has to take the initiative. Once you have a child, the Hayes family will make sure you're well taken care of." I thought about his sudden visit the other night, all the flirty moves he made the second he walked in the door. His strange behavior finally made sense. He was back to complete his mission. I forced a smile and replied, "We'll work hard on it." That evening, Nick drove me to my building's underground garage. I got out of the car. Before I closed the door, I noticed he was still gripping the steering wheel with one hand, making no move to unbuckle his seatbelt. He was just watching me silently. "So," I asked casually, "you're not staying tonight either?" He turned to look at me, his eyes dark and deep. "I am," he replied in a low voice. Then he quickly unbuckled his seatbelt and got out of the car. There was a new package waiting at my door. Once inside, I opened it and found the new fitness tracker I'd ordered. Because I hate exercising, my health is pretty average, and I end up at the doctor's every other week. Those 5 days in the hospital with the stomach flu were a wake-up call. I decided I had to start working out. Nick went to take a shower, so I sat down with the tracker and the instruction manual to figure it out. By the time he came out of the bathroom, he had sat down next to me at some point, but I was still struggling to connect the band to my phone's Bluetooth. Seeing my frustration, Nick chuckled. "You're hopeless, you know that? You can't even figure this out." Ignoring my epic eye roll, he took the band from my hand, slipped it onto his own wrist, and tried to connect it for me. I leaned in close to watch, not realizing how near we were. His arm was pressed against my chest, separated only by the thin fabric of my shirt, close enough for us to feel each other's warmth. Once he got it connected, I leaned in to check the data on the screen. That's when I saw a notification pop up, "High heart rate detected. Are you currently exercising?" His real-time heart rate was 120 beats per minute. Why would Nick's heart rate be so high when he was just sitting there? I was wondering if the tracker was broken when I felt an intense gaze on me from above. I looked up and met Nick's deep, burning eyes. His Adam's apple bobbed several times, and his cheeks and ears were an unusual shade of red. "What's wrong with you?" I asked, confused. After I asked, I noticed his gaze was fixed on a certain spot on my chest. I followed his line of sight down and saw that a button on my shirt had come undone at some point. Out of 6 buttons, 3 were open. Leaning forward even slightly revealed more than I intended. And it was pressed right against his arm. When I realized, my face flushed crimson. I quickly pulled away from him and fumbled with my shirt, too embarrassed to look up. The tracker on his wrist was still flashing high heart rate, and now it had jumped to 130 BPM. "Maybe you should, take that off." Yeah, Nick's voice was surprisingly hoarse. All his usual arrogance was gone, and he seemed just as awkward as I was. He fumbled trying to take the band off. Seeing him so flustered, I had a thought. Could it be that he was like me, and this was his first time, too? That night, after my shower, I tossed and turned in bed, unable to sleep. The scene from earlier kept replaying in my mind. Then I'd remember that he'd read the little fantasies I'd written in my notebook, and my face would get so hot I had to turn on the AC. Sometime late in the night, I finally drifted into a hazy sleep. In that half-dreaming state, I felt the bed dip beside me, and the fresh scent of men's shampoo filled the air. I froze, not daring to even turn over. Nick lay down next to me. His steady breathing told me he was already asleep. I was stunned for a moment. He'd gone into the wrong room. Just as I was about to reach out and shake him awake, he rolled over to face me. He wrapped his arms around me like I was a teddy bear and pulled me into his embrace. Resting against his solid chest, I could smell the faint scent of his body wash, my favorite, freesia. Oh, well. Being held by him was actually pretty comfortable. I decided not to wake him. Not only did I not wake him, but I even placed my hand on his body. As I explored, I grew bolder, losing my way in the darkness and venturing further and further down. When I realized what I was doing, I flinched and snatched my hand back. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would burst out of my chest. I quickly squeezed my eyes shut and tried to sleep. Annie never noticed that the man above her had opened his eyes long ago. In the moonlight streaming through the window, he was staring down at the person in his arms. Patience and restraint were really, really difficult. The bathroom light stayed on all night. When I woke up the next morning, Nick was gone. I had no idea when he'd left. Before we left for work, I couldn't resist asking him, "Mr. Hayes, can I have my meeting notebook back?" He had already stepped out the door, but he paused when he heard me and came back. He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, his voice stuffy with a bit of a nasal tone, like he had a cold. "First, at home, you should call me your husband. Second, I haven't finished your meeting notes yet." I scratched my head in frustration. It's never a good feeling when someone has something over you. I secretly decided that if he wouldn't give it back, I'd just have to go get it myself. At work, I was antsy for a while. Then I saw one of the interns looking worriedly at a document. I asked her if she was having trouble. "Karen asked me to give this file to Mr. Hayes," she said nervously, "but I'm scared." I had been looking for an excuse to go to his office. I decisively took the file from her hands. "I'll take it to him." In that moment, I became a hero in the intern's eyes. "Nick Hayes, you really are an unpopular, fully automated yelling machine." I took the file and knocked on his door, bracing myself for a verbal assault. But instead, I saw him resting his forehead in his hand, his eyes downcast. His lips were pale, and he looked completely drained of energy. Did he not sleep well last night? He looked like he could fall asleep any second. He looked up as I came in, his eyes following me. As I got closer, I noticed the trash can next to his desk was full of tissues. "You have a cold?" He nodded silently, still propping his head up as he sniffled. He looked so weak and pitiful. I couldn't help but frown. It seems pretty bad. Why don't you go to the hospital? Nick looked up at me. His lips moved, and he started to reach for my hand. Before he could touch me, there was a knock on the door. Come in, he managed to say, his voice thick and muffled. The heavy, congested sound was like it was wrapped in layers of cloth, making it hard to understand him. How did he get such a bad cold so suddenly? A male colleague came in with a document for Nick to review and sign. We were on pretty good terms. While Nick was reading the file, my colleague started whispering to me. Annie, are you here giving a report? I mumbled, giving a small nod. That proposal you did was excellent. I'd love to learn from you sometime. No problem. Your team's plan was really creative, too. We should exchange ideas sometime. Nick finished his review, signed the document, and tossed it back at my colleague, impatiently waving him out. Sensing his boss's mood, my colleague wisely shut his mouth, waved goodbye to me, and mouthed see ya. After the door closed, a shadow fell over Nick's already weak-looking face. Seeing his expression, I suddenly lost the nerve to ask for my notebook. I decided to feign concern instead. Mr. Hayes, are you okay? You said 16 words to me, but you said 21 words to him. I'm not happy. Seriously? That's why. My lip twitched. I was speechless. He's this sick, and he's still keeping score. He turned his head away, giving me the cold, resentful shoulder. Completely exasperated, I went and got him a cup of hot water and put it in front of him. I tried to reason with him, softening my voice as I asked again, how did you get such a bad cold all of a sudden? You were fine yesterday. It might be because I took a cold shower last night. But the water heater at home isn't broken. Is there something wrong with him, or is something on his mind? Taking a cold shower on a cool autumn night. He clearly couldn't work properly in this state. Do you want to go to the hospital? I asked. If he went to the hospital, I'd have a chance to get my notebook back. I don't want to go by myself. I'll go with you. Okay. He immediately stood up, went to the coat rack, and obediently put on his coat. While his back was turned, I snatched my meeting notebook from his desk. He stepped out to call his assistant to bring the car around. I quickly hugged the notebook to my chest, dashed out, and stuffed it into my bag with lightning speed. After pulling it off, I let out a long sigh of relief, secretly thrilled that he hadn't seen a thing. I took Nick to the hospital. In the VIP room, he was leaning back on the sofa, his eyes closed, his forehead beaded with a cold sweat. I thought he might be running a fever. I went over and touched his forehead to check. It was burning up. After taking his temperature, a nurse came in to start in 4. But the hand she needed to use was clutching mine, and he wouldn't let go. The nurse stood by, unable to resist teasing, "You two are such a lovely couple." I blushed and tried to pull my hand away, but his grip was too tight. I couldn't break free. As our hands were clasped, our wedding rings clinked together, locked in a tight standoff. Feeling the metal brush against each other, we both instinctively looked up, our eyes meeting with 1,000 unsaid words between us. But in the end, we said nothing, just silently looked away. Nick, let go. Please don't go, honey. Stay with me. He pleaded pitifully. I used my free hand to stroke his cheek, trying to soothe him. I leaned down and whispered, "I'm not going anywhere. Let's just get the 4 in, okay?" His lips were pressed into a thin line, but he nodded obediently and let go of my hand. In that moment, he was like a family dog that had come home injured, wagging its tail and begging for comfort. I tried to hide my smile. While he was getting the 4 and resting with his eyes closed, I slipped into the bathroom and took the notebook out of my bag. I wanted to see just how much trouble my past writing could get me into. But when I opened it to the first page, I was stunned. He had written replies underneath my little diary entries. My entry: he moved out of our home today without a word. The house feels so empty. His handwriting was fluid and strong. I'm sorry, honey. I know you don't like me, and I could tell you were uncomfortable around me, so I moved out to give you some space. I mean, I didn't exactly love him at first, but I didn't hate him either. I figured since we were married, we should at least try to make it work, but then he just up and left. So much for that. I pouted and flipped to the next page. My entry: I was organizing the closet today and noticed he has so many suits, but they're all identical. I don't get it. Do you like them, honey? If you do, I'll wear one for you every day. If you don't like them all being the same, I can buy different ones. My entry: I had lunch with a coworker today. She wanted to switch purses, and her husband brought her a new one right away. Ugh, another day of being jealous of other people's love lives. I'm so sorry, honey. If you had called and asked for something, would have done it too. But you never called me, not once. You were so intimidating I was afraid to even get near you, let alone call you with demands. Did I have a death wish? I silently grumbled at him in my head and kept flipping. My entry: Karen said she fought with her husband today. They're both so exhausted from it. Seeing her like that made me a little grateful I don't have that problem. After all, the man never even comes home, hee hee. Not hee hee. My entry: I used to have a crush on him, but ever since I found out he didn't want to marry me, I've started to let go. I often forget I'm even married. I hope he never comes back, ha ha ha. I'm your husband, honey. 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 My entry: his mom called me again about having kids. Ugh, as if it's something I can just do whenever I want. Do you want kids, honey? If you want them, I'm ready anytime. If you don't, then we won't. My entry: the barbecue beef bowl I had for lunch was so good. I know how to make that. I'll make it for you next time. My entry: I must be the luckiest person. I got beautiful flowers for Valentine's Day and for our anniversary. Even though I have no one to celebrate with, the flowers make me happy. You silly girl, those were from your husband. From me. My entry: when is the director going to stop talking? I'm so sleepy. Come lie in my arms. My entry: the project is finally done. Hooray. You did great, honey. As I got to the last few pages, the tone started to change. There was a period where my creative juices were flowing, and I took a bit of a detour. Of all the guys I knew, Nick was the most handsome and had the most sex appeal. He'd never know, anyway, so I used him as the model for several pages of our rated content. I didn't even bother to change his name. And now, I saw his notes in red ink scattered among my dense black script, as meticulous as a professor editing a dissertation. This part is good. We should try it. Well written. You get a gold star. Correction here. I'm not that short. This is making me blush. Honey, what am I supposed to do when I want to kiss you right now? I like you so much, too. So much. Why did you stop writing? Run out of inspiration? Do you need me to provide some for you tonight? More, please. By the time I reached the end, I didn't need a mirror to know my face was bright red. What was all this? Nick seemed so cold and aloof on the surface, but secretly he was this, intense. No wonder he looked so devastated when I gave him that one-word answer the other day. Thinking about it, my mood suddenly brightened. I put the notebook back in my bag, fixed my hair, wiped the tears from my eyes, and went to find Nick. He was sitting on the sofa with his legs crossed, a laptop resting on them as he attended a meeting. One hand supported the computer while the other had the 4-needle in it. His fingers were long and slender, the veins prominent. The afternoon sun shone on him, making him look undeniably sexy. I stood there staring for a while. He seemed to sense my gaze and looked up from his meeting, smiling at me. He mouthed silently, 1 second, almost done. I sat down next to him and waited patiently for him to finish. He wrapped up the meeting in a few sentences. Perhaps because he was sick, his whole demeanor was much softer. His voice was light. "What's up?" I pulled my notebook out of my bag with a straight face. When he saw it, he first tried to gauge my mood, then his eyes darkened. "You like me, don't you?" I asked, cutting straight to the chase. "Yeah," he responded, his voice low and hoarse, the end of the word trembling slightly. "But you said you'd never marry me." "When did I say that?" he asked, suddenly anxious as he sat up straight. So I helped him recall the memory. He took a deep breath and explained, "I only said that to my friend because I overheard you telling Grandpa you wanted to call off our childhood engagement. I said I couldn't marry you anymore. If you didn't want to marry me and didn't like me, I couldn't force you, right?" "I'm sorry," I said. "I saw you throw the gift I made for you in the trash. I thought you hated me. The little stuffed bear you made? I've kept it safe this whole time. The one in the trash can, I saw it, it was the one you gave to his nephew. I beat him up for it later, so now his bear is mine, too. I have two." The more he talked, the more frantic he became, afraid I wouldn't listen to his explanation. So that's why his nephew's face was so swollen for a while. He got beat up. "Wow. You have no idea how much I looked forward to marrying you. I always remembered our engagement, ever since the first time I saw you as a kid. But then I heard you wanted to cancel it, and I was heartbroken for a long, long time. Later, my mom was the one who asked you to marry me to help me with the inheritance, and you finally agreed. Mom told me we needed to have a baby quickly, but I was afraid of scaring you, so I thought it would be better to move out first. Was that really stupid of me?" he asked suddenly at the end. I saw a faint blush creep across his pale face. "Yes. Incredibly stupid," I said, feigning disgust. "That day when I asked what you were doing, I'd heard you were in the hospital and wanted to come see you. But when you replied like that, I was so scared I cried the whole way over to your place." "So you were just going to give in after you were done crying?" His expression froze for a second, then he nodded. "If you can't beat M, join M." I put my hands on my hips, puffing out my cheeks. "You think the worst of me. I'm sorry, honey. But since I'm a sick patient, can you please not kick me out?" I thought for a moment. "We'll see how you behave." A few days later, after Nick had fully recovered, he started getting restless. He'd been sleeping in the guest room to avoid getting me sick. I remembered the night he'd mistakenly come into my room and asked, "You haven't gotten lost and ended up in the wrong room lately?" "Good for you, you're learning your way around." Nick looked confused. "What wrong room?" "I've never gone to the wrong room." I reminded him about the night he'd climbed into bed next to me. Nick drew out a long, slow "oh." Then he said, completely straight-faced, "That was from what you wrote in your notebook. I'm a softie. I was just making your dreams come true." "Then why did you leave afterwards?" "Because." I suddenly remembered he'd gotten sick from taking a cold shower, and it all clicked. My heart started to race. That night, we acted out every scene I had written. In the warmth of our embrace, Nick's voice was deep and enchanting as he said to me, "Look, the moon is so beautiful tonight.